Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here today. It's always wonderful to be here at CPAC. It's one of the highlights of the year for the conservative movement, for people to come together from across the country and hear from the great speakers, including this year, President Trump and Vice President Pence. First, I want to thank Matt Schlapp and the wonderful staff at ACU. They put this thing together. It is a brutal undertaking every year for them. And not only do they do a great job here at CPAC every year, but Matt Schlapp was up in New York a lot during the campaign in September and October, helping the president, then Mr. Trump, try to work on policies that would get the conservative movement out in droves in November. And I think Matt was a huge, huge part of that. And I know President Trump thanks him very much for it. And I will say it's much better to be here to talk about President Trump's conservative agenda than my usual every year talking about Hillary Clinton. So I'm really happy about that. Look, 2016 was a historic year, and I'm truly honored to have been part of it. I got a chance to serve as the deputy campaign manager for Mr. Trump, and then I got a chance to serve as the deputy director of the presidential transition team. Those were high honors for me in my career and my life, and it was a wonderful 5 months to be able to work on that. The Trump phenomenon, what has really become known as the Trump conservative populist outsider message, is really something that I got a chance to see in my relationship with President Trump. I got to see from the inside over many years. I first met Donald Trump in 2010 through a mutual friend of ours, Steve Wynn, and many of you know him. And I got a chance to know him not through politics, but by our personal interactions over a golf tournament that I was hosting for Children's Hospital here in Washington, D.C. And I told Mr. Wynn about it, and he was helpful. And he told me that Donald Trump had just bought the golf course where I was hosting the golf tournament, and he said I should meet him. So through that early introduction, I got a chance to know Mr. Trump's generosity and his incredibly big heart firsthand. And it wasn't about politics at all. It was actually about my young son, Griffin, who's here with me today, who was going through a series of brain surgeries and heart surgeries, actually. And so we were raising money for Children's Hospital so that the next children could have that same unbelievable care. And so, I got a chance to meet President Trump, and then after that, got a chance to visit with him about politics over and over again. And Mr. Trump sat for some of our films. I made a film with Newton Calissa Gingrich on American exceptionalism, which we've showed here at CPAC in the past, and he was in that, and one of our films on the United Nations. And it was through those early conversations that I saw the glimpse of what could be a candidate Trump and a President Trump. We've also made many films with Steve Bannon. I think all of you now know Steve. Steve was here on Thursday, and he said, hey, are we showing any of the movies here? Because Steve and I show films here every year. We made one film that we showed here last year called Generation Zero. And Generation Zero is a film about our nation's dire financial situation and our overspending and our debt. But the overarching theme of that film is the forgotten man. And it was really about the man or woman who gets up every day and tries to find work, or gets up every day and goes to work and pays taxes, but basically plays by the rules and is forgotten by the elites in Washington. And while Steve and I were making that film, Donald Trump was out being a business leader around the world and learning those same things, but from a different vantage point. And so the forgotten man really became that Trump voter that we were looking for in 2016 in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And as you probably know, in 2014, 2015, I actually hosted Mr. Trump here at CPAC in a room right around the corner, and the rooms were always overflowing, and it was there that it was really palpable that this thing was beginning to take hold, and you could really tell that something was going on, because Mr. Trump would say things like, We don't have leaders. We have leaders that shouldn't be there. They have no experience in negotiation or job creation. Their only experience is getting elected. And those are very familiar things now, but these are several years ago that he was saying these very familiar messages that end up being the winning messages. So Mr. Trump also attended our Freedom Summits, and our Freedom Summit series around the country. We held one in Manchester, New Hampshire, and he really was starting to figure out in April of 2014 that he really was going to find that winning message. So he would come and he would talk about immigration. He would talk about the economy in a way that people really were starting to connect with him, and I could see him really grow as a candidate. And so in August of 2016, Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway came into the campaign in a staff shakeup. And that's when I got a phone call from Mr. Trump and asked me to come on and help them run the day-to-day campaign. And it was really a tremendous opportunity of a lifetime. And so we were able to put on these campaign events. And one of the things that I noticed was the size of the crowds and the energy of the crowds. Our events were filled with what Hillary Clinton deemed, obviously, our basket of deplorables. And so while folks lined up for literally miles and walked miles to come and see Donald Trump by the tens of thousands across the country, Hillary Clinton could just barely fill a high school cafeteria. It was really embarrassing. And look, President Trump knew something special was happening because we were able to see the mainstream media's coverage, right? They wouldn't show the big crowds, and Mr. Trump got on them about it, obviously. The polling experts, of course, completely missed it. But I have to tell you that we hit the Rust Belt, and President Trump, he hit the Rust Belt hard. And so when we were down in the polling in Pennsylvania, he said, let's go back. When we were down in Michigan and Wisconsin, he said, never give up. Let's go back and make the case again and again and again. You know, when President Trump now talks about winning, he actually knows how to win. And that's the thing that the American people wanted. They were desperate for a winner who wanted to make America exceptional again, really in line with what President Reagan got elected with in 1980. And as we moved on in September and October towards Election Day, Mr. Trump dug in even harder. We ran out of places to go in the Rust Belt. I mean, we did so many events so many times a day that we would run out of places to go. I would be like, we just were there 2 days ago. We can't go again. And so we decided to go to Minnesota. Now, everybody said, what are we doing? People in the media were like, these guys are crazy. They're off their rocker. They're trying to, do a head fake to the Clintons that, and by the way, anytime we did a head fake, they bit. Anytime they did a head fake, we tried to stay within who we were and really run our campaign. And I think that was a big decisive factor. But we went to Minnesota only one time during the campaign, and we lost Minnesota by 45,000 votes. That was it. President Trump only lost by 45,000 votes. And by the way, Gary Johnson got 112,000 votes in Minnesota. So he actually was a big difference. And then on Election Day, our path to victory, when we win Florida and North Carolina and they come in, and the mainstream media, it just, I can't tell you how delicious it was to watch their faces. I'm going to be honest with you. We hadn't won some of these states since 1984, and they were panic-stricken. And it was an unbelievable thing. So I got a chance on election night to be there, and it was a wonderful experience. And then I got a chance to be to serve on the presidential transition team, and I got a chance to make the case for many conservatives to be in the cabinet, and proudly I got a chance to support Mick Mulvaney and Scott Pruitt and other tremendous conservatives who are going to do great things for the American people. And so, we're only 37 days into this administration, and we're already looking at an unbelievably conservative agenda, and I think he's standing up. And the reason that the people on the left are upset is because he's keeping his promises. He says what he means, and he means what he says. So I can tell you, Neil Gorsuch, our nominee for the Supreme Court, and 118 current vacancies on the federal bench is the reason that we're here today. Because we must fill those vacancies for the future generations of America. And that's one of the reasons that I fought so hard to defeat Hillary Clinton, was we knew that. So on border security, and on immigration reform, on tax reform, on deregulation, and on changing transgender bathrooms back, and on repealing and replacing Obamacare, President Trump is with us. President Trump is with us. And that is the most important thing. As we leave CPAC, as we go across this country back home, we have to take back home with us the realization that the left is so angry and outraged, because when Barack Obama said it 8 years ago, elections have consequences. And they meant it then, and they drove us, the conservative movement, to the edge. And now elections have consequences, and you're going to see those consequences through conservative policy from this president every day for the next 4 years, and that's an exciting thing. Thank you all very much, and God bless America.